Hello everyone, and welcome to 17 minutes of abject torture. So here we have the 4th challenge of this Gacha love delivery event. It's called Spinster Goddess, and it stars Jessica, as you can see. Now, maybe it's just me, but if Jessica didn't want to be a spinster, maybe she shouldn't have rejected McLean the way she did. So anyway, this fight is actually not that hard, I feel like. It's relatively easy to clear if you have a bunch of SSR characters all powered up and ready to go. It was a little bit more tricky to get this done with SR characters, however, and for me the biggest problem here is really just the damage output from this boss. So this boss has 3 skills. The first one is called Weep, the second one is called Impending Range, and the third one is called Denounce. Now the nice thing about this boss is that she's very predictable. She goes on a very stable cycle, these 3 skills, and just goes through them over and over. As far as that goes, there's no real variation in this fight. But a couple of these skills do have some RNG attached to them, which is kind of annoying, but it's mostly pretty manageable because they give a pretty generous 18-turn time limit. So the important thing with this fight is to just pay attention and not get impatient. The first skill the boss has is called Weep. It's just a big AoE attack, and believe it or not, in my opinion, this is pretty much the bottleneck for this fight. This is a 4-block AoE with a very high multiplier. So it's actually not that far-fetched for this skill to one-shot some of your weaker units, and that was the main thing I had to try to work around as I looked at the SR characters and tried to choose which ones to bring in. So you can see I brought in Narm. She was actually the biggest liability when it came to the Weep skill, because she could get one-shot by this skill. So I dug up last rites from some of my equipment on other characters and stuck it onto Narm. Obviously they still left it so that I had to make sure to cap Narm's HP anytime this AoE was about to come, and that's not always an achievable goal because as you'll see very soon, you're gonna have to split up your party quite a bit in this fight. So that's why I also brought Olivier here. So in an SSR team you can pretty much trivialize a lot of the damage in this fight if you just bring Luna or even someone like Landius who can reduce AoE damage, or at the very least, it basically lowers the stat check on this fight, which is actually really high if you don't have somebody who can lower the AoE damage like this. So Olivier, of course, helps with that because he buffs everybody with a damage taken reduction at the end of his turn. The nice bonus is that both Narm and Olivier are archers, and having archers is very, very useful in this fight because the boss spawns 2 flyer enemies every 3 turns, and Narm usually has no problem one-shotting them, and Olivier can one-shot them if he's at 100% life, but it's kind of hard to maintain 100% life on this fight sometimes. But anyway, the AoE Weep skill is the biggest problem here, and that's why I brought these characters that I did. The other 2 skills that she has are pretty much mostly annoyances and not really a big issue. So the second skill she's using is called Impending Rage. It doesn't directly attack your units or anything, but what it does is that it marks at least one of your units with 2 status effects. One's called Anger Mark and one is called Constriction. Anger Mark makes it so that when that unit ends their turn, they will summon an ad that is invincible but will just pulse damage within 2 blocks at the end of every turn. So basically you just need to drop the hot potatoes far away from the fight so that you can continue to engage the boss. The other status effect called Constriction increases your movement by 8 so that you can move around the map to drop the anger mark where you need to. I don't know why it's called Constriction. I mean, that seems like it should be the opposite of what it should be called. But whatever, second mechanic gives you a hot potato, drop it somewhere on the field, and every time she uses it, the amount of targets that will get marked by this increases by 1. Now, the most annoying part of this is not the fact that I have to drop this stupid hot potato, it's the fact that the person or people who get the hot potatoes is completely random, so I really don't want it to be given to Matthew or Chris, or at the very least I don't want both of them to get it at the same time because they are my 2 best DPS for the boss here. Matthew does the most damage to the boss, whereas Chris can do a decent amount of damage while also healing the team. But as you'll see during this fight, she's decided to be very, very annoying and mark Matthew almost every damn time. But you can't do anything about that, that's just how the RNG rolls sometimes. So the final attack that this boss has is called Denounce, and this is a single target attack that does 1.8 times damage and does a debuff called Foul Mood. Now, 1.8 times damage might sound like it's a lot, but honestly, she's not that strong in single target, so most players should be able to tank this relatively well with reasonably tanky troops that have decent magic defense, and angels especially take almost no damage from these. Which is another reason, of course, that I didn't want her to be marking Matthew with her second skill, because if Matthew can stay in for her third skill, I'll take less damage from this thing. But as you'll see, I'll be able to tank it with characters like Olivier just fine, as long as my HP is at an adequate level. Now, the foul mood debuff it gives is related to another mechanic of the fight, so in this fight, you are constantly given stacks of a debuff called Heartbroken. Heartbroken increases the amount of damage you take, which just makes the initial AoE that you'll be using that much more dangerous over time. And once it stacks to 4 stacks, it will also like explode sorta, and you'll take 50% of your life as damage. Now the damage part of it actually isn't that big a deal because it actually makes all the stacks wear off as well, so in a way it's actually kind of helpful because you could just heal up the damage afterwards and it's not a big deal. It's before that when you have 3 or 4 stacks and you're taking a bunch of extra damage that might be a problem. So when she does weep, she will give 1 stack of Heartbroken to every single character hit. And going back to the Foul Mood debuff that was given by the third skill that she casts, Foul Mood is a debuff that gives you another stack of Heartbroken, but it also passes to allies. So if you are so inclined, you should probably just move the units 2 spaces away from each other so they don't keep passing this around over and over. But honestly, if your stats are high enough and you have the right units here, you can basically just ignore this entire Heartbroken mechanic and just wail on her until she dies while dropping the adds where you need to drop them. So again, to simplify, she does an AoE, and then she does a thing where she marks you that will drop an add, and then she'll do a single target. So she does these 3 things on a loop over and over until you kill her. Overall, this is not a difficult challenge once you read the skills and you really understand what it is that she's doing. After that, it's really just down to a stat check and making sure you don't die to the AoEs, and keeping your teammates at appropriate places so that they don't die. Dropping the adds from her second skill can actually be kind of dangerous, because they get dropped at complete random in terms of which adjacent title they are dropped on, and since they do a 2-block AoE, you need to make sure you don't stand 3 blocks away from someone else if they are also dropping one of these adds, because what it will do is that it might force them to take 2 hits, and it depends on what kind of character it is and what's going on, but if you take 2 of these AoE blasts, it's pretty likely that the unit is going to die. But honestly, as you'll see from this video, I get really near the end of this fight, and I never run out of space to place these things. So really, you just need to stop for a second and really think about the logic of where you place these things, and you should never be crowded in this fight. I guess the final thing to add is that you need to make sure to kill the adds every single time. You have the turn they spawn and the turn after to kill them, because if you don't do that, they have a skill that can draw in all the slimes next to them, and obviously if that happens, they'll just drawing all the slimes next to your party and they'll all explode at once and kill you. I guess one more thing to add is that there is this crystal here on the map. This can clear all stacks of Heartbroken from a character if you need to, but honestly, if you want to clear this map quickly or on time, you need to make sure not to use this thing too often. I think most players who have been around a long time will be able to brute force this fight pretty easily, but if you are a more recent player or you're using weaker characters like I am here, you should use this crystal every once in a while, but don't waste too much time on it, because as you'll see in this video, I do run a little bit close to the end of the timer. But overall, this is not a difficult challenge, I feel like. It is just one that you need to pay a little bit of attention, and I think this is pretty fitting for a 4th challenge. Anyway, I got nothing else to add, so see you guys in the next video.
何かお手伝いできることありますか？ 僕のコンサートへようこそ。行くぞ。
行くよ。何かお手伝いできる？
行くぞ。そこだ。
何かお手伝いできることありますか？行くよ。はい、こっちだよ。行くよ。
違うメロディーを奏でてみようか。
はい、気づかないうちにごめんなさいね。
暗黒を脱しなさい。
やあ、僕のコンサートへようこそ。
わかりました。はい、何かお手伝いできることありますか？よろしくお願いしますね。
行くぞ。
わかりました。こっちだよ。はい、これはあまり使いたくないですわね。
暗黒を脱しなさい。
行くぞ。
行くよ。
行くぞ。行くぞ。正確に。やあ、僕のコンサートへようこそ。まさにパーフェクト。違うね。まさにパーフェクト。
わかりました。何かお手伝いできることありますか？行くよ。気づかないうちにごめんなさいね。はい、
違うメロディーを奏でてみようか。
行くよ。
行くぞ。
行くよ。
行くぞ。やあ、
行くよ。
やあ、僕のコンサートへようこそ。
ここ行くよ。 ますか？こっちだよ。わかりました。はい。
やあ、僕のコンサートへようこそ。行くぞ。
何かお手伝いできることありますか？気づかないうちにごめんなさい。かわいそうに。はい。いくよ。何かお手伝いできることありますか？
やあ、
何かお手伝いできることありますか？
行くぞ。